Pretend I'm a 7-year-old boy who's watching his silly little television show, and on this show, the female character, the only female character, is always in trouble and constantly needs to be saved. And then, you guessed it, the male character comes in and saves her like she's a damsel in distress. Sound familiar? And let's say I, still a 7-year-old boy, start to think, maybe all women are weak and dumb and always need to be saved. Well, now what? Well, now you got yourself a victim of the detrimental effects of gender stereotypes in children's television. I should preface, though, that though the effects are not as immediate or extreme, the implications are still present. But that's about it. That's the power of television. Let's quantify it a bit more. In 2008, a large quantitative media analysis of children's TV was conducted, where several international researchers explored main characters in fictional programs from 24 different countries. They discovered the following. There were twice as many male characters as there were female characters. They counted 26,342 main characters, and only 32% of them were female characters. And the remaining 68% were males. However, female characters were more likely to be seen as teenagers compared to males, with a 37% to 25% difference. Body representations for both male and female characters were distorted. 15% of female characters were seen with particularly thin waists, compared to only 6% of males. And male characters were twice as more likely to be seen as overweight than female characters. And in another study conducted by Dr. Stacy Smith and her colleague, Crystal Cook, they discovered in their G-rated film analysis of movies from 1990 to 2005 that less than 28% of all speaking characters were female characters. 83% of narrators were male, and in their cumulative study of PG, G, PG-13, and R-rated films, there was a significant hypersexualization of female characters. Female characters were 5 times as more likely to be seen in sexually revealing clothes compared to their male counterparts. And female bodies were also distorted, with nearly a quarter of them seen as extremely underweight and with thin waists compared to only 8% of male characters. But why do these numbers matter? What's the point of knowing that of 26,000 characters, only 8,000 of them were women? The constant exposure to gender stereotypes in content that children regularly view impacts the development of their gender schemas and their social and cognitive behaviors. Today, we will be exploring the intricacies of children's gender schemas and the social and cognitive effects of children's media and how we can combat the issues that lie ahead. Well, what exactly are gender schemas? Well, according to Carol Martin from the Arizona State University and her colleagues, gender schemas are mental models that guide how children perceive and interpret information in their environment. This aligns with the gender schema theory, which, according to Frank Taylor from the University of Pennsylvania, suggests that children are developing a sense of maleness and femaleness based off of these stereotypes and organize their behaviors around them. Now, whether a child, our schemas are developed for our environments. You and I, we have them for nearly everything, from animals to relationships. We have developed a set of notions that fall under these categories. But when it comes to the gender schemas of children, it is important to recognize what exactly are children perceiving to create these schemas. Whether a child has positive or negative schemas of genders, the fact remains that they are applying these attributions into their everyday lives, into what they believe is inherently masculine or feminine. And the impacts can be harmful to themselves and their interactions with others. Now, the formation of gender schemas goes hand in hand with the development of their cognitive and social behaviors. Their very gender identity, according to Jennifer Aubrey and Kristen Harrison, is constructed through a complex web of processes, including socialization and cognitive development. The social learning process established by Albert Bandura can be generalized through the descriptions by Aubrey and Harrison. And to understand this process a bit better, we'll go back to our 7-year-old analysis, our 7-year-old analogy. So, I'm a 7-year-old boy again, right? I'm watching my television show like any other kid who has access to cable or internet in the 21st century. And I'm immediately captivated by the main male character, the explosions, the actions, the gadgets, the really cool supervillain. And this can be any television show. I'm sure a couple hundred children's shows follow this description. But this is what Aubrey and Harrison would consider the first step, where children are attending to television programming geared toward them. And then we move on to the second step, where I began observing the TV show, noticing how gender is being modeled in these episodes, from how male characters are being treated to how female characters are acting in certain situations. And it makes sense, really, because if my understanding of reality is limited to what I'm seeing on TV and my interactions in school with children who are probably watching the same thing as me, it's very likely that my perception of reality becomes distorted. But I don't know that, because I'm only 7 years old. At this point, Bandura claims that children will start to actively transform and restructure the information that they are viewing to develop their own rules and conceptions, in which they apply these rules and conceptions into their everyday lives to determine appropriate courses of action, which will be reinforced with either punishments or rewards. But do you see the trend now? What children see, children do. They are considered an impressionable audience. Especially while children are still learning about the world around them, how reality and things of the like are being presented to them have a huge impact. But gender stereotypes are not exclusive to only TV shows. Believe it or not, kids read books, and books have gender stereotypes. And so do magazines and advertisements and toys and video games and Halloween costumes and Valentine's cards and literally any tangible object that appeals to children. So you can imagine the excessive stereotyped content children are often exposed to. Frank Taylor, again from the University of Pennsylvania, conducted an exercise with his students in which his students conducted a content analysis on children's book. Some of the common observations his students made addressed the pervasiveness of gender stereotypes in children's books, and also highlighted the clash of women's stereotyped domestic roles and the contemporary reality of working women. Sarah Mernon and her colleagues conducted another study of observing gender roles and gender stereotypes in pop culture products, such as Halloween costumes, Valentine cards, dolls, and action figures. They discovered that of all the female characters that were coded, more than half of them were seen in revealing clothing compared to only 20% of the male characters. And functional clothing, which is ideal for a lot of us, was considered a traditional masculine cue and seen in 78% of males, but only a mere 14% of female characters. And there was a frequent hypersexualization of female characters, which reinforced the sex object stereotype. In another study Sarah Mernon and her colleague Linda Smolak conducted, they state that young girls are more likely to be attracted to sexualized objects because it makes them feel older. But this sexualization can be associated with harmful and negative perceptions. Clearly, gender stereotypes are everywhere. And in an effort to promote positive perceptions and beneficial interactions between children and their environments, we must establish this basic understanding before we move forth with solutions. And now we have this basic understanding, so how can we limit the implications of gender stereotypes on children? The most obvious option would be to just completely limit what children are seeing and what media they're being exposed to, but in a world where technology is literally everywhere, this solution is improbable and frankly too restricting of children. Rather, parents and guardians can become more aware of the content that is readily available to their children and also limit the exposure to stereotyped content. Dr. Stacy Smith and her colleagues also say that parents are the most important role models that children have and can do a great deal to help children understand the content that they are seeing by simply questioning the portrayals of male and female characters. Sarah Mernon and her colleagues also say that parents can help a lot by encouraging socially desirable stereotyped behavior, but without associating those gendered terms to those behaviors. Parents and guardians can also research about books, content, toys, products that are more progressive and steer away from gender stereotypes. With an increased awareness of inclusivity and intent to avoid stereotypes, More and more content is being available that positively portrays gender. And finally, the most important thing that we can do is communicate and educate to children about the implications of stereotypes, what stereotypes are, and how they look like. As technology is becoming more and more available to quite literally everyone, the more harmful implications there are. And as we become more aware of these impacts, we must do our best to promote positive change and growth among the future generations. Thank you.